Somewhere between midnight and dawn, you wake up, your eyes open, but nothing else does. You try to move your arm. It doesn't move. You try to call out. No sound comes. And then you feel it. A presence in the room, watching you, sitting on your chest. But the real answer is far stranger than a ghost story. Your body did this to you on purpose. Every night, when you fall into REM sleep, your brain does something remarkable. It floods your spinal cord with chemicals that switch off your muscles. Not weaken them. Switch them off completely. This is called REM atonia, and without it, you would act out every dream you have. You would run from the monster. You would throw the punch. You would fall off the cliff, for real, onto your bedroom floor. So your brain paralyzes you, every single night, on purpose, to keep you safe. Here's the strange part. Sometimes your mind wakes up before your body gets the message. The dreaming stops. Your eyes open. Your awareness floods back in. But the chemical switch hasn't flipped yet. You are lying there, fully conscious, locked inside a body that will not obey you. This is sleep paralysis, and it is not rare. Some researchers estimate that nearly 8% of people will experience it at least once in their lives. But knowing the mechanism doesn't explain the terror. Because almost everyone who experiences sleep paralysis reports the same thing. Not just the inability to move, a presence, something in the room with them. Why would a simple glitch in your sleep cycle conjure a figure standing at the foot of your bed? Psychologist Alan Cheney spent years studying exactly this question. He surveyed thousands of people who had experienced sleep paralysis, and he found the hallucinations clustered into recognizable patterns. One he called the intruder, a sensed presence, often malevolent, sometimes seen as a shadow or a shape in the dark. Another he called incubus, a crushing weight on the chest, pressure, sometimes the feeling of being strangled. These weren't random nightmares. They were consistent, structured experiences, showing up the same way across cultures, across centuries, across people who had never spoken to each other. That consistency is the real mystery, because if this were just imagination running wild, you would expect infinite variation. You don't get that. You get the same shadow, the same weight, the same feeling of being hunted while frozen. Folklorist David Hufford noticed this too, decades before Cheney's research. He studied a Newfoundland phenomenon called the Old Hag, where sleepers reported a witch-like figure pressing down on them in the night, holding them still. Hufford didn't stop at Newfoundland. He found the same core experience described in medieval European accounts of the incubus and succubus, demons said to sit on a sleeper's chest at night. He found it in Japanese folklore, where it's called kanashibari, being bound by metal. He found it in West African traditions, in Chinese folklore, in Egyptian and Middle Eastern accounts of the jinn. Different cultures, different languages, different centuries, the same story, over and over. A weight on the chest, an evil presence, a body that will not move. So, why does a misfire in your sleep cycle produce something so specific? Your brain, during this state, is doing something it wasn't built for. It's fully awake, but it's still partly wired into dream logic, and one of the oldest jobs your brain has is threat detection. Deep in your temporal lobe and amygdala, your brain is constantly scanning your environment, even when you're mostly unconscious, checking for danger. When you wake up paralyzed, unable to move, unable to defend yourself, that threat detection system goes into overdrive. It's the most vulnerable state a human being can be in, awake, aware, and utterly unable to react. Your brain, sensing that vulnerability, does what it has always done when the stakes are highest. It assumes the worst. It manufactures an explanation for the danger it's certain you're in, and because you can't move your eyes properly, because your visual cortex is still tangled in dream imagery, that explanation gets projected right into the room around you. A shape, a shadow, a figure at the end of the bed. This is where neuroscientist Balan Jalal's work becomes especially interesting. Jalal has studied sleep paralysis extensively, including in populations in Egypt and Denmark, comparing how cultural beliefs shape the intensity of the experience. He found that people who believed the hallucinations were caused by supernatural forces, like jinn, reported significantly more fear and more frequent episodes than people who understood the biological explanation. The paralysis itself doesn't change. The chemistry is identical. But the story your culture hands you about what's happening in that room changes how terrifying it feels, and even how often it happens. Think about what that means. The same biological glitch, interpreted through a medieval European lens, becomes a demon. Interpreted through a Newfoundland fishing village, becomes a witch. Interpreted through West African tradition, becomes a spirit. Interpreted through a modern secular mind that's read about rematonia, becomes, at worst, an unsettling but explainable few seconds. You are not being haunted. You are watching your own threat detection system misfire in real time, and then watching your own visual imagination fill in the blank it created. There's a modern trigger that makes this worse, and it's one you probably don't expect. Sleep paralysis becomes far more common with irregular sleep schedules, sleep deprivation, and sleeping on your back. Studies have found back sleeping in particular correlates with higher rates of episodes, possibly because it makes breathing slightly more restricted, which itself heightens the sense of pressure on the chest. Which means the modern lifestyle, late nights, inconsistent schedules, phones glowing at 1 a.m., scrolling until your eyes finally give out, is quietly manufacturing more of these episodes than any other point in human history. You are, in a very real sense, more likely to meet the shadow figure at the end of your bed because of your sleep schedule than your ancestors ever were. And that's the strange loop at the center of all this. The oldest fear humans have ever recorded, a malevolent presence in the dark, sitting on your chest, holding you down, is not some ancient curse being reactivated. It is your own nervous system, running an emergency protocol that misfires because two systems in your brain, one for movement and one for consciousness, briefly fall out of sync. Every culture built a mythology to explain it because the experience is too vivid, too consistent, too terrifying to shrug off as nothing. And in a way, they were onto something real. It is your body sensing genuine danger. The danger just isn't a demon. It's the vulnerability of consciousness without control, the oldest fear a mind can have, dressed up in whatever costume your culture happens to keep in the closet. So the next time you wake up at 3 a.m. and cannot move, and you feel that weight settle onto your chest, remember what's actually happening. Your mind woke up early. Your body is still running the safety protocol that keeps you from acting out your dreams. And your brain, sensing that you are utterly defenseless, is doing exactly what it has always done in moments of danger. It's telling you a story. The presence in the room isn't there to hurt you. It's the oldest part of your brain, trying to protect you, in the only language it has ever known.